Scott Frost is back at UCF, but can he restore the program to its former glory like he had them back in 2016 and 2017, where he won a national title? Here to tell you that's probably not going to happen in year one. UCF, just a wild story. The Gus Malzahn experiment really didn't pan out down in Orlando. Last year, the Knights going just 4-8. Started the season strong, 3-0, but went 1-8 down the stretch. They had 3 one-possession losses, actually played some great teams very tough. They only lost by 1 possession to Cincinnati, 1 possession to Iowa State, 1 possession to Arizona State. So the 2 teams that played for the Big 12 championship, UCF was very close to defeating, but ultimately fell short of the postseason. Gus Malzahn kind of just pretty much stepping down, going to take the offensive coordinator position at Florida State, and now Scott Frost finds himself back as a head coach after a very unsuccessful stint during his time at Nebraska. You take a look at what UCF has coming back this year, pretty much nothing. I mean, honestly, this is a team completely comprised of transfers. A lot of inexperience, a lot of new faces, 67 new players for UCF in 2025, if that tells you anything. So this is either going to go really great for UCF, we're going to see them kind of have an Indiana-type year, or it's going to be another kind of rebuilding year for the Knights, and maybe Scott Frost can get them back to those glory days as soon as next year, maybe the year after. A lot has changed for him. Back then they were in the American Athletic Conference. Now UCF, a member of the Big 12. The game, the world of college football has changed so much since Scott Frost was here back in 2017. They had that magical undefeated season with that win over Auburn. So, this is a completely different scenario. The offense loses their top 2 passers, their number 2 all-time rusher in program history, R.J. Harvey, who had over 1,500 yards and 22 touchdowns last year, and they lose their top 8 pass catchers and only return 59 starts on the offensive line. So this offense is a just complete rebuild. They're either going to turn to Taven Jackson at quarterback, transferring in from Indiana, or Ja'Cory Brown, who was with the program last year and has shown some dual threat capability. Miles Montgomery does return at running back, had over 290 yards last year and 3 touchdowns. But again, nothing like R.J. Harvey. The wide receiver core pretty thin, but adding a lot of transfers that have a lot of speed. Dwayne Thomas coming in from Charlotte. Marcus Burke in from Florida. DJ Black in from D2 Limestone, where he was a first-team all-conference selection. So that'll be an interesting guy to watch out for. Again, a lot of speed for UCF this year. But again, how quickly can they come together? Just because you're fast doesn't mean you're good. Just because you have talent doesn't mean it's always going to result to great success on the field. So that's kind of what we're watching out for UCF. His offense was good last year. They averaged over 448 yards per game, over 30 points per game. It just didn't translate to wins. Defense. They're led by defensive coordinator Alex Grinch, and if you know college football, you know he does not have a fantastic track record. So it's going to be interesting to see how he pans out at UCF, not just this year, but for years to come. 6 starters are back on the defensive side of the ball for UCF, but they do lose 12 of their top 13 tacklers from last year, a unit that gave up 26.9 points per game, but only 120 rushing yards per game, only 219 passing yards per game. So really not horrible numbers there. The offense didn't have bad numbers. The defense didn't really have horrendous numbers, maybe making the 4-8 season even more surprising for the Knights after they did make a bowl game back in 2023. Malachi Lawrence does return up front on the defensive line, had 5 sacks last year. Najalik Kelly also returns up front with 5.5 sacks. Lawrence and Kelly opposite of each other at defensive end, those 2 guys combining for 10.5 of the 22 sacks that UCF had last year. So that's a huge get for Scott Frost to maintain and retain those guys down in Orlando. They also add R.J. Jackson in from Tulsa up front on the interior defensive line. The linebacking core adds Lewis Carter in from Oklahoma, Callie Lawson in from Virginia Tech, and don't sleep on a guy named Cole Kozlowski, I butchered that name. 133 tackles, was a first-team Patriot League selection last year at Colgate. Could be a surprise star for this defense for UCF. Really excited to see him in action. The secondary brings in a lot of transfers, pretty much all transfers in the secondary. Philip Dunnan coming in from Florida Atlantic. Jaden Bellamy coming in from Syracuse. Isaiah Reed was a first-team Ivy League selection at Brown. Back in 2023, I should add. So how quickly do those guys come together? How quickly does the entire team come together? We know Scott Frost is a decent head coach. He honestly should have had a much better record at Nebraska if he could have just have won those one-possession games. Had a great stint at UCF for like 2 years here. But again, a lot has changed since those glory days. You take a look at the schedule for UCF, it's very, very tough. I mean, it really is. They play North Carolina in the non-conference. They have to go to Kansas State. They have to go to Baylor, to Texas Tech, to BYU. Some certainly winnable games on the schedule, but a lot of very tough ones on there as well, especially for a team that's dealing with so many new places. No continuity on the coaching staff, no continuity on the roster. It's going to be an interesting thing to watch out for. UCF will, though, start 2-0. I think they'll beat Jacksonville State, who is now without Rich Rodriguez and without a lot of talent that saw them really compete at a high level in the Conference USA, and they'll beat North Carolina A&T. So a great 2-0 start, and I think two great opportunities for this team to figure out their identity. Jacksonville State, that game could be closer than people realize, but UCF should win. Two great games to kind of work out the kinks, figure out what works, figure out what doesn't, figure out who's going to be good, figure out who's not going to be good, and then you get a bye week to improve even more on that before you head into the bulk of the season. Still in the non-conference, they take on Bill Belichick and North Carolina, and I do think they're going to lose this game to the Tar Heels. I look at this game, and UNC's got the better quarterback already. Gio Lopez transferring in from South Alabama. Got some underrated stars at the skill position for UNC. The defense has a lot of talent that I do believe Bill Belichick's going to develop. And obviously, from a coaching standpoint, I'm taking Bill Belichick over Scott Frost every single day. So even though this game is at the bounce house where UCF is 42-9 in the last 8 years, although 4 of those 9 losses did come last year, even though it's a very difficult place to play, I do think North Carolina has enough to come on the road and get this win. UCF 2-1, now heading in to the bulk of Big 12 conference play. And their first game in conference play is on the road against a true Big 12 title contender in Kansas State, and I do believe they're going to lose that game. I don't really think they have much of a shot in this one on the road. A very dangerous running team with a veteran quarterback in Avery Johnson and Dylan Edwards coming back, an underrated wide receiver core, 5 starters back on defense, one that could be even stronger than it was last year. You could argue this is actually Chris Kleiman's best team in Manhattan, and that's a scary thought considering he's won at least 8 games in every single year there with the exception of that 2020 COVID season. So they're going to lose this game in Manhattan, and then I think they're going to lose to the other Kansas team in the Jayhawks. Even though Kansas has to come to the bounce house, even though this is a winnable game, this is an interesting game for me because Kansas's defense has potential up front in the front 7. The secondary, not so much. So if UCF can find themselves a good enough quarterback and these receivers end up being better than maybe we thought, they might be able to exploit this Kansas secondary and get a win, especially at home. But on the flip side, you have to hope that UCF's defense is ready to go, facing a veteran quarterback in Jalen Daniels, facing a veteran running back in Daniel Highshaw, who's better than people realize. He just hasn't gotten enough people talking about him because he's been playing behind Devin Neal. I have a lot of faith in Lance Leipold to get the job done here, even though it is on the road. I think it's very close and certainly a winnable game for the Knights. I think they fall short, though. So a 2-0 start has now become a 2-3 start, and they, I think, will lose their next 2 games heading into their bye week. I do not think they're going to beat Cincinnati. They lost at home to Cincinnati last year, 19-13. UCF had a better team last year than they're going to have this year. They lost at home to Cincinnati. Now they've got to go on the road to the Bearcats, who have a better team this year than they had last year, and UCF, in my opinion, has gotten a little worse. Stack all that up, it points to a Cincinnati victory. They lose on the road. They could beat West Virginia at home. That's a winnable game. So, you mark Kansas as a winnable game. You mark West Virginia as a winnable game. Both those at home, but I like Jaheim White at running back for West Virginia. I actually really like West Virginia's defensive line. I like Rich Rodriguez a lot. I don't have high expectations for the Mountaineers this year. By no means do I have high expectations for them. Both these teams are very similar in so many ways. I think it's interesting that, both West Virginia and UCF have both kind of gone to the past for their future. Rich Rodriguez used to coach at West Virginia from 2001 to 2007. Now he's back in Morgantown. Scott Frost now back at UCF. Both these teams pretty much dealing with tons of transfers on both sides of the ball. So these two teams are very, very similar. And one would think I might pick UCF here because of the home field advantage, but I just can't do it. I think West Virginia might have better quarterback play in the long run. I think they got better running back play, and I really do like that defensive line quite a bit. So I think the Mountaineers eke out a victory, and UCF, after that 2-0 start, is 2-5. Let's go ahead and make them 2-6 when they lose on the road to Baylor, who is, again, a Big 12 title contender. Sawyer Robertson, elite rushing game, top 2 wide receivers, 8 starters back on defense. I mean, you name it, Baylor's got it. It's in Waco. Yes, UCF's well rested, but don't think they have enough with all these new players and new faces and inexperience to beat this veteran Baylor squad. So at 2-6, they've got to find a way to get something here. Probably not going to go bowling. I mean, if they want to go bowling, they're going to have to win out. And I think that's going to be a lot easier said than done. but they keep those hopes alive at least for a little bit when they beat Houston on November 7th. A Friday night game at the Bounce House, and for what it's worth, I think UCF is fairly competitive in some of these games. I think they are competitive against North Carolina, Kansas, West Virginia, all home games. I think they're competitive there. You look at this Houston game, I think Houston's defense is still going to be really, really strong, but I do think Scott Frost's offensive mind can find some way to exploit some weaknesses there and get some points on the board, and I still have some doubts about Houston's offense. They only averaged 14 points per game last year. Yes, they're going to improve, especially with better quarterback play led by Connor Wigman, but are they going to improve enough to really come on the road and win this game on a short week? I'm going to say no. I think UCF pulls off a mini upset, if you want to call it that. They beat Houston. They're 3-6, but then their bowl hopes are dashed. They were very slim to begin with, but they're dashed when they get destroyed on the road against Texas Tech, a Texas Tech team that is loaded on both sides of the ball. The best team Joey McGuire's fielded there, largely due in part to the fact they landed the number 1 transfer portal class and doled out a lot of money to get that class. They're going to lose in Lubbock. They're 3-7. They're going to be 4-7, though, when they beat Oklahoma State on Senior Day. I look at this Oklahoma State team, very similar to UCF, very similar to West Virginia. Lots of questions on both sides of the ball. Maybe the most questions, though, for the Cowboys. They had tons of experience last year, went 3-9. This year, practically no experience, tons of new faces. Don't know what to expect from them at all. Maybe they surprise us because Mike Gundy is one heck of a coach. I'm going to say they don't, though. I think Senior Day in Orlando, still a very difficult place to play. A UCF team that's getting competitive. They find a way to get a win over the Cowboys, who gave up over 500 yards per game defensively last year. UCF exploits that. 4-7, and then they lose on the road to BYU. A very difficult place to play, as we know. Even with the loss of Jake Retzlaff, we know that BYU has talent in the trenches. They're strong up front on the offensive line, strong up front on the defensive line. They return their running back, LJ Martin, their top wide receiver, and Chase Roberts, and actually have a very underrated secondary. So all that being said, BYU, despite the loss of their quarterback, still more experienced than UCF. They've got home field advantage. Senior Day for the Cougars. They get the win. And in Scott Frost's return, UCF goes 4-8, and I'd venture to say there's a couple of one-possession losses in there as well. Look, I like the hire. I really do. I think it was a good move by UCF to bring Scott Frost back, and I think he actually will do well here. But anyone that believes that immediately, or maybe even next year, he's going to replicate the success that he had back in 2016, 2017, you're lying to yourself. The Big 12 is a very deep conference. UCF, as a program, is in a very different spot than where they were almost 10 years ago. The game of college football with the transfer portal, NIL, and everything like that is in a completely different spot than it was almost 10 years ago. Scott Frost will get this team back to relevancy. He will make them a contender in the Big 12. I feel confident in that. I really do. It's just not going to be this year. Not going to be this year with so many new pieces. Not this year when he's getting back into the reins of being a head coach again. Maybe UCF finds a way to a bowl game if they can beat Kansas or West Virginia. We had them losing more home games than they typically would. 3 earlier in the year to North Carolina, Kansas, West Virginia. If they can just win 2 of those, they go bowling. But I just don't think a bowl game is in the cards. A rebuilding year for the Knights. Last year was rough. This year, same record, rough again, but the future looking bright. A foundation being laid, and really to me, the only way is up for UCF now with Scott Frost back at the helm. So guys, as always, thank you so much for watching us here at the Gridiron Expert on YouTube. Make sure to continue to like, comment, subscribe, share our videos. Check out everything down in the description below. That includes our website, thegridironexpert.com, home to our expert picks. Some of the best college football and NFL spread picks in the entire country. Do not miss out on those. The link for that down in the description below. Also, check out our weekly newsletters over on thegridironexpert.com. Free to sign up for. We want you to take advantage of it. Become a member of our GE Nation today. And once again, as always, thank you so much for watching. And we'll see you next time right here on The Gridiron Expert.